गुड इवनिंग मैम रेखा। मैम आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है, अनम्यूट करो ना।
हेलो,
हाँ अभी आई मैम आवाज।
क्लियर है?
हाँ हाँ क्लियर है मैम।
ओके।
वहाँ से कौन अटेंड कर रहा है लेक्चर मैम आपके यहाँ पे? ऑफलाइन में कौन कौन बैठा है?
ऑफलाइन में 3 स्टूडेंट्स हैं।
क्या नाम है मैम?
हाँ, टेल रेखा मैम योर नेम, शी विल बी टेकिंग द अटेंडेंस। सिमर,
ओके।
जय एंड निष्ठा। निष्ठा फर्स्ट टाइम है, जय भी फर्स्ट टाइम फॉर दिस। यस।
जय पूरा नाम?
What's your name? Man, your full name? Man Khan. Okay. H-A-N-T. Oh.
चिन्मय आया है क्या?
नहीं, चिन्मय नहीं आया है। जैसे न्यू स्टूडेंट मन खान।
नहीं समझ पा रही मैम, आपका आवाज ही नहीं आ क्लियर आ रहा है मुझे।
Chinmay is not there. You can sign.
जय करके आपने कुछ बोला ना?
हाँ, जय बोला।
जय बोला, ओके।
Now there are 4 students.
4 स्टूडेंट।
हाँ, अभी मन खान just join.
मैम मैं बताती हूँ कौन कौन है। मनकंद, सिमर और जय वोरा। और 4 स्टूडेंट का नाम क्या है?
निष्ठा, what's your surname? निष्ठा धवन।
ईशान, ईशान या निशान?
निष्ठा धवन।
निष्ठा धवन, ओके।
And online Ishan is there and Padi is there.
तो खारघर में मंथ बैठा है, सिमर, ईशान और निष्ठा। जय और निष्ठा, ओके। थैंक यू मैम।
Okay, good evening Ishan, good evening Padi.
Good evening ma'am.
Okay, you can have your videos on so we can interact.
Ma'am, right now I'm not being able to keep it on because it's showing my bandwidth is low. I'll switch it on towards the middle of the class. I need to keep the.
So can you hear clearly?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
It's just I tried switching it on before. It's not working.
Okay. Okay, so Man, do you have the study material? All the books? Yeah, for verbal 2 books and for quants you have another 2 books. Yeah. Okay, so we are doing WL today, the writing and language portion. Okay. So I'll be using the PDF here, so you can follow the PDF from here, and if you can't see properly, you can get back to your book. So for the exercises, you can get back to your book. Okay, so now 3 of you won the last time. Or you can just move in that side instead of the corner, so you can see it clearly. So last session we had done the introduction. So the introductory session you will all read, right? And it's just the type of questions and what we need to do, and the timing, all that is there. So that is very and then we had done the sentence errors. So there we had done basically 2 types of errors: the fragments sentences and what else? Run-on sentences. Yeah. So the fragment sentences are what? Incomplete sentences where you need to add something to complete it. And the run-on sentences are what type? Anyone idea what run-on sentences are? No, they're usually sentences which have more than 2 clauses attached to it, or maybe 2 clauses, but not properly combined together. Usually when like it happens that when you are writing an essay or a long answer, you end up writing long sentences, keep adding and, but at the end of it, you have a compound sentence, complicated, but it's not correct, right? So we have done correction of these type of sentences. So if you have a fragment of a sentence which is incomplete, what would you do? Add something to it. So what is missing you have to see. Now all your questions will be multiple choice questions. So your work is to pick up identify the correct answer, right? Now in identifying the correct answer, there are 2 things you have to keep in mind. Number 1, it should be grammatically correct. Yeah. And number 2, it should fit into the sentence. So any subject matter that doesn't correspond to the subject matter of the sentence will not be your answer. And that's in short. So you will go through the examples that we have over here. Now when we're talking about sentence fragments, we had these examples, right? So suppose you have this one, this new one. To boost the number of women in STEM fields, including electrical, chemical, and industrial engineering, something is missing, right? What is missing? Does this make a complete sentence? No. So there has to be something added to it to make it complete. So if you see, this is itself not, is this an independent clause? So what are independent clauses, first thing?
It should contain a subject and a verb.
Anything else? Anything about independent clauses? You won't give the answer. Let them try. Anything else about independent clauses? No? Okay. They can stand alone as a complete sentence. So between the independent clause and the dependent clause, independent clauses can be written as complete sentences. Dependent clauses will not be complete sentences. They will require an independent clause to complete it. Right? So when you talk about participle sentence, it may contain the verb, it may contain the subject, but it will not be complete in itself. Right? So here this is not a complete sentence. First thing, you have to add an independent clause to it. Right? So you will go through the other examples. There's some classification. Okay. Now another thing, just to get you started with the type of question formats. So whenever you have a question in SAT, you will have like these ones. The grammar questions are usually stimulus questions. So no questions asked, only options given to you. First option is usually no change if there is no error. You have to identify whether there's an error. And you will be getting questions with the question number will be embedded in the paragraph. So you know which sentence it is referring to. You may have a portion underlined or the entire sentence underlined or nothing underlined. Yeah. So depending upon what is underlined, now suppose half the sentence is underlined or part of it is underlined, then only that part you can change. You cannot touch anything else. Right? So you can do these. You've already done these in the last section. And answer explanations are also given. So you can go through them. Now when we spoke about run-on sentences, they were complex sentences and they didn't have, what were the 2 things that they didn't have?
They are not connected properly.
So either the transitions are not there or punctuations are not there. Right? So now there were 2 main rules that you have to remember. And when we're talking about clauses, if you Now, first thing you have to identify the clauses. Yeah. So when you have to identify the clauses, you have to see whether now the parts of the sentence you have to break it down. You have to see whether they are independent clauses or dependent clauses. Suppose you have two independent clauses. You identify.
Ma'am, are you writing something on the board? Because I can't see the board.
You can't see
No.
the board. Okay, which camera is on?
Is the camera in front of you? I think.
This camera is on. Okay, maybe if I stop sharing with you. No, the board is on. Just a second. Okay, Pari, yeah, we get that done. In the meantime, you can just, yeah. Which one? Can you fill it out?
I can see it now.
Either one of them.
Now I can't see the board. You're presenting the screen.
We'll figure out how to get out of it. If you go into advanced response, and otherwise, if you go into screen share, Manish, ये screen share plus ये board वाला कैमरा दोनों इकट्ठे नहीं आते
ये वाला बंद नहीं दिखेगा एक कैमरा बंद करेगा एक कैमरा बंद करेगा
अच्छा एक कैमरा बंद करेगा screen share plus board दोनों चाहिए
ये ना अब बोर्ड दिख रहा है
Thank you. Can you see the board now?
Yes, I can see.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
we were talking about the parts of the sentence, right? So if you have to first break down the sentence and see what types of clauses are there. Suppose you find two independent clauses in the sentence, right? And you have two independent clauses and there's no punctuation in the middle. So you will add what is required. Now there are certain rules. We will do the rules again when we are doing conjunctions today. So the basic rule is when you have two independent clauses, how will you correct them? With a comma and a conjunction here. What type of conjunction? Fanboys conjunction. So when we say fanboys conjunction, what does it mean?
For and not, but, or,
Yeah.
yet, so.
For and no, but, or, yet so. Now, depending upon the relationship between the two parts of the sentence, you will be using your conjunction. Yeah, and two independent clauses, comma, conjunction, fanboys conjunction. Suppose you have one independent clause and one dependent clause. So your dependent clause comes first and the independent clause comes after. So dependent clause is like if you say your sentence begins with although or because. So the first part will no more be an independent clause. So we have this example here. This one. So if you look at the first example, the first sentence, the deli had no milk left after a rush of morning customers. The owner rushed to order more. Now here what you have two parts of the sentence, a comma in the middle. Now if you read the two separately, what type of clauses would they be? Both are independent?
Yes.
Right? Now both independent clauses separated by only a comma, when you have both independent clauses and a comma in the middle, that is incorrect. Right? So the first thing you will see, what are the clauses? What is where is the punctuation? If they are independent clauses and you have a comma in the middle, the comma should always be followed by a conjunction. Right? Now if you look at the second sentence, this you can fix either by adding, in this case, so the owner rushed, right? Or you can add the relationship between the two clauses is what? Cause-effect relationship. Because of this, that happened. Yeah. So you can add a because in the beginning. Now, when you are adding a because in the beginning, what happens to the first part of the sentence? It becomes a dependent, no more an independent clause. So if you look at this, you cannot write it as a complete sentence on its own. So when you have a dependent clause coming first, you will have a comma and then the second part over there is an independent clause. Yeah. Now there is a third case where you have the independent clause coming first and a dependent clause after that. So what do? Yes, you can tell me.
No comma, but a transition.
No comma. Yeah. You will not add a comma in this case. You can write this down. Yeah. Two independent clauses, comma, conjunction. Dependent clause first, independent coming after that, comma in middle. And your conjunction already has come in the beginning of the sentence. Yeah. You have the independent clause first, the dependent clause coming after that. You don't need a comma in the middle. Right? Now there's another case. If you have two independent clauses, what else can you do to separate them properly? Yeah. You can use a semicolon. Now, when do you use a semicolon? One.
When they are based on the same idea, but have a normal cause-effect relationship.
Yeah. So if both parts of the sentence relate to the same idea, but you can separate them as two separate clauses, you can use a semicolon. Now suppose you have two independent clauses and they're not real, they may be continuing with an idea, but there's no relationship. So the idea may be a separate idea completely. You can write it as a separate idea. In that case, you will be using a full stop in the middle. Right?
Not ready to put the second.
between two independent clauses.
After the first.
After the first one. So instead of a comma and conjunction, you can use a semicolon to separate two clauses. Either of them, depending upon what is the relationship between the two clauses.
If it's not positive, then we have to.
Then you can use a semicolon, right? So I'll just get you to the last part. So just what we have done. So we'll take this example. So here you have, you can go through this. So here are the different rules. Yeah. So when you use a semicolon, now we have the sentence over here. She was offered the prestigious job. She turned it down because she did not want to move to Texas. Right? We have done this last time. So it's a repeat for you people who were not there. Now if you look at this sentence, is the sentence correct or there is some error? Okay. You can see it. What page is it in your book? 13. Yeah. So she was offered the prestigious job. She turned it down because she did not want to move to Texas.
There should be something.
Job and she turned it down, right? So till here you can see that this is an independent clause. Now she turned it down. She turned it down because she did not want to move to Texas. So we have two independent clauses, no comma, no punctuation in between. Yeah. But we'll have a comma, but after that. Yeah. Or you can use a semicolon between the two. Yeah. The different ways of correcting this depending upon what options you have. Suppose you don't have an option which says comma but. What would you do?
Semicolon.
You can use a semicolon. Suppose you don't have a semicolon also as a correct option. You look for something else. You can use a full stop in the middle. Right? If you don't have any other option. Now if you look at this one.
So no change option is also correct.
No change option is not correct because clearly there are two independent clauses, there's an error in the sentence. No change option will come in when the given sentence is correct. Yeah, there is no error. So no change option means you don't need to do anything with the given sentence.
But a full stop is.
Full stop is not given. Full stop is at the end. In the middle, there is nothing. Right? So in the middle, now first thing you did was identify the clauses, break it down. Yeah. Then you will figure out what can be done with it. Yeah. Now here we have just given you the different ways in which you can correct it. So you can put a full stop, you can put a comma but, you can put a semicolon. Third option is semicolon. Now if you look at the fourth option, now what is the relationship between the two? There's a contrast relationship. Yeah. So after the semicolon, you can use a transition to show the contrast. Right. Now suppose between the option 3 and option 4, both the options are given to you. Which one will you choose?
Option 3.
Okay, if you choose option 3, so between 3 and 4, which is a better option, which is giving you the relationship between the two parts? 4, right? So if you are given 3 and 4, both of them, you will be going with 4 because that is a better option than 3. Right? Both are grammatically correct. They're not grammatically wrong. But this is giving you a better answer than the previous one. Now, what else can you do with the sentence? You can rewrite the sentence. Right? Since she did not want to move to Texas, she turned down the prestigious job that was offered to her. Nice. Now, if you look at the structure of the sentence, what do you find? Since she did not want to move to Texas, that becomes a dependent clause. And then we have a comma after that. Right? And the rest of it, she turned down the prestigious job that was offered, that she was offered. Now, if you look at the last one, yeah, we have rearranged the clauses, rearranged the words a little, made it concise. This is also correct. Now, if you look at it, she was offered the prestigious job, but turned it down because she did not want to move to Texas. Now, but turned it down, we have removed the she. Yeah. So the second part is now a dependent clause. First part is still an independent clause. So we have used a conjunction, but not a comma. Right? So these are the different ways one particular sentence could have been corrected. So this way you will be doing all the other examples. So go through the examples. There are a couple of questions, you can do those. Right? So today we will be moving on to our next session. And yeah, one thing I'll tell you, make sure you don't miss out on any of the sessions. Yeah, because if you miss out, then I'll have to repeat again and we lose it. Okay. Okay, now coming to the conjunctions. Now we already spoke about conjunctions, these fanboys. These are conjunctions. What type of conjunctions are they? They are coordinating conjunctions. So what is the purpose of coordinating conjunctions? Any idea? So what did we do when we used, say when we use and? What does it do? Combining two parts of a sentence. Or it could also be combining two words. Right? Right? So if I say Nishant and Nisha. Okay, so Nisha and Jay attended classes today for the first time. Okay, so and is combining two subjects, right? And can also be combining two phrases or two sentences. So the coordinating conjunctions are used to combine two. Now they'll be combining two independent clauses, right? And the rule is, if they are combining two independent clauses, you'll always have a comma before that. That you have to remember, right? And another thing, when you have coordinating conjunctions, they'll be combining two similar or identical or maybe identical types of, or the not identical, grammatically equal subjects. So either they are two words, that is two nouns, two subjects, or two clauses. It should be of equal ranking. Say we have this one. Chow and the poodle, both are dogs. You combine them, right? And now between clauses, if you look at the example here, Ishan and Faria, I hope you are following. Right?
Yes.
So now if we have this sentence, say, we hope the weather will be good, for we plan to camp out tonight. Right? So the last example on page 15. So now, was a relationship? We have used for over here. So it's a cause effect relationship again. Yeah, we want to come outside, so we want the weather to be good. Yeah. Now, if you have look at the two clauses, two independent clauses, joined by a comma and coordinating conjunction. Right? You have to remember. Okay, now the few things you have to remember when using your quadratic conjunctions. Number one, two independent clauses, and it should be preceded by a comma, not a semicolon. If you have a semicolon and a quadratic conjunction is used after that, you know there's an error, right? So after a semicolon, you can have subordinating conjunctions, but not quadratic conjunctions, right? You can have transition words, but not the Fanboys conjunctions. Okay. Say we have a few examples to fix. Jerry is an accomplished writer and he travels to Ireland for residencies quite often. Now we have and over here. So what are the two parts of the sentence? So whenever you are correcting a sentence, finding the error, first thing you have to look for a conjunction or a punctuation. Once you've located the conjunction and punctuation, you look at the clause before it, clause after it. Yeah. Now in this case, what are the two clauses before and after and? Both are independent, right? Jerry is an accomplished writer. He travels to Ireland for residencies quite often. So we need a comma before that, right? So you can correct the sentence by adding a comma before and. Let's look at this one. William, comma, and I are best friends. No comma required. Yeah. What is and joining? Just two subjects. Right? So when to use a comma, when not to use a comma is clear. So that was about coordinating conjunctions. Comma, coordinating conjunction, two independent clauses. If you don't have two independent clauses, then you have to use this rule. There has to be a conjunction before if there is a dependent clause or not. You have to figure out what is the dependent clause and where it is. Right? Now coming to your subordinating conjunctions. What does subordinating conjunction mean? Something which subordinates one part of the sentence. Yeah. So subordinating conjunctions are usually used to connect unequal ideas. It may be grammatically unequal, say not two independent clauses, but a dependent clause and an independent clause. So one of the clauses can be, and it can also make an independent clause a subordinate clause, a dependent clause. Yeah. So those are the things you have to keep them. So and it also gives a relationship between the two clauses. Right? So if you have a subject matter, the relationship can be given with the help of either the Fanboys conjunction in the case of independent clauses, or if you have one independent clause and one dependent clause, then you will be using the subordinating conjunction. Right? Now coming to the rules of the subordinating. So subordinating conjunction can be giving you the time, reason, condition, etc. So here is a little table with examples. So say after, yeah, after this that happened, or maybe in order that. So it can be a word or a phrase, which is showing the relationship between the two parts of the sentence. Yeah. So the main purpose is joining two parts of the sentence and giving you the relationship between them. And basically, it could join. It could give the relationship between one independent clause and one dependent clause. Okay. If you look at this one. Although the dragonfly is harmless to human beings, many people are frightened by its appearance. Right? The sentence begins with although. So what happens to the, if you look at the first part of the sentence, when you have a comma here, two parts of the sentence, that is a basic rule no matter what sentence you get. Look for conjunctions, look for punctuations. Yeah, and figure out whether they are used properly or not. If they're not used correctly, then you will go with correcting the sentence using your options. So if you look at the sentence, although the dragonfly is harmless to human beings, many people are frightened by its appearance. So what relationship is it given between the two parts? The first part is dependent. You are using an although. Yeah. If you read now, identifying dependent clause, how would you do? It will not be a complete sentence. Right? Any part of the sentence which cannot be written as a complete sentence on its own is a dependent clause. Very important. So although the dragonfly is harmless to human beings, so what is it giving? Many people are frightened by its appearance, means it is giving a contrasting relationship. Although they are harmless, people are frightened. Yeah. Then we will look at the second one. Some birds cannot fly because their wings are too weak to lift their bodies. So where is the conjunction and what are the parts of the sentence?
Some birds cannot fly.
Some birds cannot fly. That is an independent clause. Can be written as a sentence.
Yes.
Yeah. Now what is the relationship between the two? Now suppose because was not there. Hmm? Some birds cannot fly, their wings are too weak to lift their bodies. Yeah. But if you look at the relationship between the two parts, what is it? Because of this, that happens. Yeah. So some birds cannot fly, and why? Because their wings are too weak to lift their bodies. So you will be adding a subordinating conjunction. Or subordinating conjunctions are also known as transitions. They can be used in between a sentence, in the beginning of the sentence, between paragraphs, right? Between sentences. So here it is giving you the cause-effect relationship. Now, what else will you look at? There is a punctuation here. Do we need a punctuation? Yes, Ishan, do we need a punctuation in this sentence?
In the some birds cannot fly one, right? Because
Yeah, some birds cannot fly one.
no.
Why?
Ma'am, because I think it's because there are because one of them depends on the other, I believe. Because to lift their bodies, you're not sure which they are talking about. If you're writing their wings are too weak to lift their bodies, you don't know
I'm
which.
talking about grammatically. Do we need a punctuation?
Ma'am, can
I don't think so.
Ma'am, we don't need a comma because first comes the independent and then comes the dependent.
Right.
That's why
So
we don't.
you have this rule over here, the independent coming first, the dependent coming after that, so no punctuation is required. Right? So you have to keep in mind these three are very important. Right? So whether you are using a conjunction in the middle or conjunction in the beginning, you have to figure out which part is a dependent clause, which part is an independent clause. Right? Okay. Now we come to another example. So we have this example. Because the desert is so hot, it has few traditional plants. Now you look at the sentence carefully and tell me, is it correct?
Yes.
Yes. Hmm?
That's what.
So if you look at the sentence, we are beginning with a conjunction. First part is a dependent clause and the second part is an independent clause. Now the same sentence can be written in a different way. You look at the second one. The desert has few traditional plants because it is so hot. That is also correct. But here the first part is an independent clause, second part becomes a dependent clause. Same sentence written in two ways, both are grammatical, right? And both have the same subordinating clause, subordinating conjunction because used, but since it is used in two different places, the rules of clauses are different in both of them. Let's look at this one. The last sentence on page 17, right? Prisons are a relatively recent phenomena in world history because exorbitant costs. Now, what is underlined is because exorbitant costs. Yeah. Now, not only is this becomes a dependent clause, but what is something is missing, right? So you will look for options which will complete it, right? So now if you look at the connected sentence, because they have exorbitant costs, right? Now prisons are relatively recent phenomena in world history. Here we see they have used a comma. So so here this comma will not be used.
And also we can write because of exorbitant cost.
Right, we can say that because of exorbitant cost, prisons are relatively recent phenomena. Let's look at this one. Whenever I go to the store. Now that is a sentence fragment. Yeah. We need something to complete it. So whenever I go to the store, it is what do you have to do? You have to add something to it. What do you do when you go to the store? So suppose I say I spent at least $20. Yeah, that will complete it. And you have a comma in the middle. That corrects the error, right? Similarly, the next one, because he was tired. Yeah, we have to add, because he was tired, what happened? So the reason is given, but the subject matter is complex, right? So you can add some. Okay, let's look at this example. This one with El Nino. So the question one. Yes, Pari, can you follow? So the question one, although El Nino is typically associated with a sharp spike in annual rainfall on the west coast, comma, though there are other meteorological factors that can offset this effect. So
Option C.
wrong. Option C. Now here, why would you use option C? Now, first thing, if you see, you can't change the first part of the sentence. Your underlined portion is on the west coast, comma, though there. Right? So now, here if you see, there are two transitions. You can have two transitions. Right? So the first part already has a transition. You won't use another transition in the second part. B. B is okay. In B, you are separating it with a full stop.
Ma'am, I think it will be
Now you read the second.
because already there is a dependent clause in the beginning with although, so there won't be told again. So it will be an independent clause.
Now, if you read the second part of the sentence after the full stop.
We can see that the first part of the sentence is dependent, and if you put comma there,
Yeah.
it is independent.
Yeah. So if you remove though, it becomes an independent clause. Now, J, if you go with B, what will happen to your sentence? The second one will again become an incomplete sentence. Right? So the only way to correct it is C. Right? Okay. Now you can do this one. So you have two questions in this particular passage. Short paragraph. Humans have been consuming coffee for centuries. Full stop. Coffee houses exploded in popularity during the colonial era. So your underlined portion is only this. Between them is this full stop. So you look at the two sentences.
No change.
Hmm?
No change.
No change. Both are independent, but can you improve on it? D? Why D?
Because for centuries it was not explored. But in the colonial era it exploded.
Yeah, so there's a relationship between the two sentences. Now, when you find a relationship between two sentences or two clauses, you need to put them into one sentence. Yeah, and now there's a contrasting relationship. This happened, but this happened in the they exploded in popularity only during the colonial era. So, comma, but. We'll combine the two ideas and we'll make them grammatically correct. Now, if you look at the third question, right? They were protested by clergy and women, full stop. There was still over 2,000 of them in London in the 17th and 18th century. So,
B.
Option
B.
B. Okay. So what is the relationship between the two parts? You took B. So what relationship did you find? Contrasting. Although this happened, still there were over 2,000 of them. Right? Yes, Ishan?
Yeah,
What's
ma'am.
your answer?
What, ma'am?
What's your answer to number 3?
Number 3 will be B.
B or B?
B. B for Bombay.
Right. So B is the correct answer for this. Now they refer to the coffee houses, right? So that is correct. Okay. Now we move on. So this is about subordinating conjunctions. Rules are, when you use subordinating conjunction, that part of the sentence becomes a dependent clause. Yeah. So you then go back to the rules. Independent clause, dependent coming first, you have a comma. Independent coming first, no comma. If there's then next you have to look at the relationship between the two parts. And if you have two separate sentences, you can join them together using what? Subordinating conjunctions. Right? So you have to, number one, the correct relationship. And another thing which we saw, you can't have two subordinating conjunctions in the same sentence. Yeah. And when you are using a full stop, what do you do?
Not contain relation between two sentences.
No, like you said.
Two independent clauses.
Yeah. So if you have a full stop in the middle, both should be independent clauses. Right? You have to check and it's called recheck whether you have independent clause or dependent clause. Okay, now the next type of conjunction is correlative conjunctions. These are conjunctions which always occur in pairs. So you've been using these all the time, right? If so, either or, neither nor. Yeah. So both and as when you're comparing two things, as white as snow, right? Just as so. So when you have one part of these conjunctions in a sentence, you will look for the other part. Usually the questions come in such a way that one part of the conjunction is there and the other part is not there. Then you know there's an error, right? So you have to look for the option where both the parts are there and correctly used ones. So these are the conjunctions that you will be coming across, like not only but also, whether or, yeah, whether swimming for exercise or sunbathing for fun, many people must wear sun blocking lotions. right? Or if you look at this, not only homes but also apartments. So if you say not only homes, also apartments, that it will be but also. So the correlative conjunctions should appear in correct pairs, not half-half. So you will not say whether swimming for exercise and sunbathing. It will be or sunbathing, right? So you have to be very careful about the pairing of the correlative conjunctions, right? Now, what else do you have to keep in mind? Keep in mind. The first thing we see that this one, neither nor. Now you won't say neither or. It will be neither nor. Either will go with or. Yeah. Now there is more to this. If you look at this sentence, is it correct? Completely correct? This one. Neither you nor your brother are allowed back in the sleep house. If that's how you talk. Now we corrected it because it said neither and or, so we put neither nor. But is it still correct? Or is there some error?
It's correct.
It's correct? You think so?
Yes.
Okay. Now we come to some more rules. Now this is actually not correct. Neither nor is okay, but the verb after that are. That is wrong over there. Now we'll come to know why it is wrong. Okay. Now when you are using these correlative conjunctions, there should be a subject verb agreement. Right? So subject verb agreement means you have to see what the subject is. Now, according to what the subject is, the verb will be plural or singular. Right? Now, in this case, when you are saying neither nor, or when you say neither as neither A nor B, what do you actually mean? None of them. So A is not going, B is also not going. So when you are looking at the verb, what will come here? Is, because this becomes singular. Yeah, your subjects are singular. So is will come. Not we will come to the plural. If both are plural, then we will use are. Yeah. So now we come to this. The two subjects will be treated as singular when you are using neither. Right? Now suppose you have, say this one, neither Ravi nor his brother is coming. Right? Not are. And these are the type of questions where they catch you on. Okay. Now say, now if you have either or, same rule applies. Either Crystal or Julia wants to. Yeah. So both are singular. So two singular subjects, your verb will be singular. Right? So neither or, neither nor, this is very important to remember. You can mark it as important in your books. So two singular subjects, your verb is singular. Now suppose you have two plural subjects. So this one. Neither the students nor the teachers. Both subjects are plural. So your verb will be plural. So if you have two singular subjects, your verb is singular. Right? If you have two plural subjects, say neither, when you have neither nor, So you have neither nor. If you both your subjects are plural, then your verb will be plural. Are, were, so, right? Both plural subjects, verb is plural. Clear? Now, suppose we have one singular and one plural. Then what do we do?
Plural verb.
It's always plural?
I think it's a plural verb.
Not always plural.
It will depend where the position is.
Yeah, so what position will be looking at?
We will be looking at the closest one. If the closest one is
Closest.
plural, then plural. If singular, then singular.
Yes, correct. So now we will be looking at which, now where's the verb? So in these sentences, first thing you will be identifying the verb. Yeah, and then you will be identifying the two subjects. Suppose your first subject is singular and the second subject is plural. Yeah, your verb will be plural. If your first subject is plural, second subject is singular, your verb will be singular. It may, when you read the sentence, it may seem grammatically incorrect, but it is not. So when you have one singular and one plural, the subject nearest to the verb decides what the verb will be. If the subject nearest is singular, your verb will be singular. Subject nearest is plural, verb will be plural. Say this one, neither my husband nor my kids. Your verb is like. So it will be plural. Now suppose I interchange the subjects. Neither my kids nor my husband likes. Right? So even if the first subject is plural, your verb will be singular. So the subject closest to the verb will decide whether the verb is singular or not. Right? Let's look at this one. Either Crystal or Julia. What's your verb? Was.
Was.
So this will be singular, both subjects are singular.
Yeah.
Now either Courtney or her friends
Are.
right? Your closest subject is plural. So these are the rules you have to remember. Now another thing which is important is pronoun agreement. So we did subject verb agreement with quadratic conjunctions. Now pronoun agreement. Suppose you have a sentence like this. Neither Reena nor her sister. Right? Now your verb is what? Her costume. It won't be their costume. So you have two, now the rule is same as in the verb. Two singular subjects, pronoun is singular. Right? So if you have two singular subjects with either or, neither nor, your pronoun will be singular. Yeah? So in this case, if your question says their costume, that's wrong. Okay. Say, okay, now if you have two plural subjects, then your verb, the pronoun will be plural.
Plural.
So neither the students nor the teachers gave in their consent. Now if you have one plural, one singular, then again the same rule, the subject closest to the pronoun. So we have this one, neither Radha nor her friends. Now your verb is plural. Yeah. Their new piano teacher. Right? So the pronoun will be there. Suppose the subjects are interchanged. Neither her friends nor Radha liked her piano teacher. Right? So the basic rule is the same whether it is for the verb or for the pronoun. When you have correlative conjunctions like neither, nor, either, or. Single subjects, single pronoun, single verb. Plural subjects, plural pronoun, plural verb. One singular, one plural subject.
Closest to the verb.
The verb and pronoun will be both according to what is closest. Correct? So this is the basic rules you have to remember for all types of sentences. Now we come to another part. This is conjunction logic. Now we were talking about the relationship between two parts of a sentence. Yeah, and what conjunctions to use to show the relationship. Here's also one type of question you will be getting where maybe the conjunction given to you is wrong. It is not giving you the, suppose you need a contrasting relationship, but you are given a relationship of causative. Say because is written instead of although. Yeah. Moreover is written instead of however. So those type of questions we have to deal with. So when we're talking about these, we'll be looking at three types of relationships: addition, contrast, and causation. Yeah, basically we have three types of relationships. So the conjunctions related to these would be, so when we're talking about addition, conjunctions would be furthermore, in addition. For example, if a sentence is given, now instead of for example, if moreover is written, that also will be wrong. Right? So, and also likewise, moreover is when you are giving an additional information. You give one point and then you are adding something to it. Yeah? Adding another reason maybe. So let's look at the example here. Climate change is causing many heat-related deaths. Yeah? Full stop. Moreover, it is leading to conditions that in the long run will harm us. Right? There is another error here. So that comma will not be there after that. Also. So now, whenever you are having a conjunction in the beginning of the sentence, usually you use a comma after that. Right? Like, especially if you have moreover, however, you use a comma. But because you usually don't use a comma because it is a continuation of the likewise. You will use a comma after that. Huh? So students feel overwhelmed when the number of hoops they have to jump through to get to college. Likewise, they feel flustered once they get to the college by the many demands of their new environment. Right? So what is it doing? It is giving a relationship between the two sentences. So now the purpose of these is to get the correct relationship. Now if you look at contrasting relationships, what are the words you will come across? However, on the other hand, despite, unlike, although, though, right? Nonetheless, notwithstanding, right? These are all giving you contrasting relations. Say we look at this one. She practices tennis every day, though she is still unable to hit a solid bat. Right? Maybe the punctuations here are a little off. So even though many students apply to out-of-state schools, so even though, what is it giving you? Contrasting relationship. So even though they apply to out-of-state schools, they end up choosing a local college. Right? So you have, now instead of though, if moreover is given to you, would it be correct? No, right? So you have to be able to look at whenever you come across conjunctions, look at what it is given you. If it is correctly used, fine. If not, look for an option which is correct. Then cause-effect relationship. When you have because, consequently, therefore, yeah, since this happened, so, simplest one, as a result of, right? So when you're using this, say, if you're using it in a sentence, because of the tuition fee hike at the private school, many parents are opting to send their children elsewhere. Because it's giving you the cause-effect relationship. So the level of competition in college sports has become fiercer than ever. That's a statement. Then the next one is, if you neglect the therefore, what do it say? Athletes and coaches are seeking even more sophisticated training regimens. Now that can be a sentence in itself, but if the two sentences are written, is it giving a relationship between the two? No, right? If you add therefore, you'll get a relationship between the two sentences. Yeah? So he didn't pay by the meter, comma, so he received a ticket. That's also giving you the cause-effect relationship. Okay? Now, if we talk about another type of relationship where that's sequencing. So, what are the words that give you sequencing in a paragraph or in a passage? First of all, secondly, thereafter, afterwards. When you come to a conclusion, finally, in conclusion, right? So now when we are doing this grammar things, one thing you have to remember, since you'll be all applying, right? When you are applying, you have to write a lot of essays. And those essays should be correctly written. Also in your document. Remember, I talked about transitions. So you have to be using those transition words. And all the grammar rules have to be followed when you are writing your essays. So it's very important to remember these grammar rules, right? Because they won't accept essays which are not grammatically correct. So writing is also very important. Not only for answering the essay questions, but also afterwards. Okay. So now when you are using these type of transitions, say after 3 hours of waiting in the lobby, we finally admitted into the office. So we were finally admitted into the office, right? So this one. First, Caroline completed an ACT prep course, right? Then she took the test itself. So two separate sentences, but it is giving you what she did first and what she did after. Another thing you have to remember, you have to be very careful of the word then, because SAT is very cheeky. They'll give you questions which have words like, this is a spelling question. I'll just remind you, then and than. So when you are reading fast, usually we miss out on misspelling. So whenever you come across then, than, look if it is correctly used or not. Right? So this is just came up in my mind as well. Keep that in mind. Okay, now if you look at these. So when you're coming across these transition words, in the questions, what would you do? To see if they're correctly used or not. Right? First thing is whether they're correctly used. Secondly, say now if it is not correctly used and you think, okay, however should be used, but the word however is not there in your options. So look for another word which means the same. Yeah. Sometimes synonyms will be given to you, so that you can use. And there's another thing that you have to remember. In SAT, always choose the option that is concise. Not only grammatically correct, but concise. So, first of all, it is grammatically correct. Secondly, it is concise. Another thing. Anyone knows? Jay? What else? If you have two options which are, say, one of them is concise, one of them is grammatically correct, So you will choose a concise one. Another thing you have to look at is, it should be an active voice. If you have two options, one is in passive voice, one is in active voice, you will choose the one which is in active voice over the one which is in passive voice. But anything in active voice makes your option concise. Right? So these are the things you have to remember. Apart from being grammatically correct, your answer, suppose two options are given to you and you are now confused. Both are grammatically correct. What to do? Look for the one that is concise and the one that is in active voice. Right? So once you do that, you will not be choosing the one, but you will be saying that, okay, there were two options, I was confused, I chose the one that is grammatically correct, but I got it wrong. Yeah? So SAT wants you to choose the one which is concise. So that decision you have to be. So let's look at these. Okay, we'll do two of them. The rest you can do on your own. So the first one, however, Jeremy never studies. However, he gets perfect grades on his exams. So you have what type of a relationship? Contrasting. He doesn't study, but he still gets his grades. Contrasting. Second one? Thus? Why thus?
It is giving a reason.
So Josephine enjoyed volunteering at the local animal shelter after school. Despite this, it was not difficult. So it was rather that she was already volunteering, so it was not difficult. So thus it was not. Right? Okay, so now question number 3, 4, 5 you will be doing on your own. See if you get them correct. And suppose you get them and the answers are given. So you can go through the answers. If you get your answer wrong, the explanation is also there. So you can go through the explanation and figure out. Now, one thing very important whenever you are, like we discussed in the previous session, whenever you are answering questions, you always have to justify your answer. So why are you choosing this particular option? Is it correct? You will first see that, and you'll also see why is it correct. So, and suppose you get an answer wrong, always figure out why you got it wrong. Why would you do that? But there's nothing to learn, nothing to mug up over here. You have to know the rules of grammar. Even in your reading section, there's nothing to mug up. You just have to use strategies. Yeah. So unless you know why you got a question wrong, you may end up making the same mistake the next time. So you have to always know why you got it wrong so that you can avoid the same mistake when you're doing it again. Right? So any question, you will always analyze. Because SAT is testing you not for just whether you know the grammar or not, it's testing you on your analytical skills. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so now the conjunctions are clear. All the rules related to conjunctions. Now the conjunctions cannot be separated from the clauses. So the rules for the clauses and rules for the conjunctions go hand in hand. Right? So now since everything is about sentences, now we come to another part, which is parallel structures. Right? So yes, Jay, you are talking about parallel structures, right? What are parallel structures?
It should be grammatically correct and like Rahul plays football. He also plays cricket and he also plays badminton. So all the sentence should
All the parts.
Yes, all the parts should have the
Same format.
Yes.
Yeah. So that is what, suppose you have a list of things. Right? Now, especially when we are comparing, That is this comes in very important when we are comparing. What are you comparing? You are comparing same type of things. Right? Now, if you are comparing cities, you won't be comparing cities with countries. So you're comparing something belonging to a particular group, you won't compare it to the entire group. Or you won't compare it to something belonging to some other group. Yeah. So when you're talking about lists, all the items in the list should be of the same grammatical form. So you're comparing verbs, all of them should be verbs. If there are nouns, all of them should be nouns. If there are gerunds, all of them should be gerunds. So what are gerunds? Anyone?
It's a type of intransitive verb, right?
Yes, there are verbs which can be used as nouns. Yeah.
They're mostly in the present participle state, right?
Yes, mostly in the present participles, usually you have the in coming at the end.
Like
Six
singing,
women.
like singing is my hobby.
Yes, singing is my hobby. It can be a noun, it can be a verb. She was singing, and singing is my hobby. Like swimming. Swimming is a sport. It is coming in as a noun. So those words which are actually verbs but can be used as noun are called gerunds. Right? So if you have a list in which maybe you have two nouns and the third one comes in as a gerund, that is also correct because it is used as a noun. Right? So when we talk about parallel structures, you can have words in a parallel format or parts of a sentence in a parallel. Parts of a sentence should always be in a parallel format. So we'll come to that. Now, when we're talking about words, say this one. This example over here. I went to the greenhouse and purchased petunias, tulips, and chrysanthemums for the garden. Now, what are the items in the list? Petunias, tulips, chrysanthemums. Right? So first thing, all items in the list should be separated with the help of commas. Last item, and, comma, and one. Right? So and comes in here also. So now here all of them are flowers. Yeah, I purchased these plants maybe. Look at this one. My favorite sports are hockey and swimming. Right? Now swimming here is in the form of a noun. Is this also correct? Now if we look at now, would you say my favorite sports are hockey and going to the gym? Right? It should be a sport. It should be a noun. Say this one. Here's where we are talking about comparison. The last sentence on page 27. I think my grandmother's cookies are better than anyone else's. What are we comparing? Here we are made it concise. They have not written anyone else's cookies. It is actually comparing cookies to cookies. Now suppose my sentence was, I think my grandmother's cookies are better than anyone else. The apostrophe S goes missing. It will be wrong. So you can't compare cookies to somebody. You'll be comparing cookies to somebody else's cookies. So that is where your comparison comes in. So when we are talking about, say, look at some sentences with errors. Agya likes laughing, singing, and to write. Writing. So when you're talking about parallelism, all the words should be in the same grammatical form. Right? Say, now the next one, if you look at this one, you must get results quickly, efficiently, and at a low cost. You have to use some word to replace at a low cost. Say cheaply. So this is quickly, efficiently. What are they? They're in the What form? Adverb form, right? So this should also be in the adverb form. So any sentence with more than 2 words, say if it is an adjective, it should be all of them should be adjectives. Noun, all of them should be nouns. Adverb, all of them should be. So you will be correcting it by using an adverb for the phrase group, right? Okay, now let's look at this one. Sonia is known for her independence, her honesty, and being intelligent. Yeah, intelligence, right? So all of them should be same. So we have this. I enjoy reading novels, playing poker, and to ride my bicycle along the riding, right? Playing, reading, riding. Now he likes to eat but not cooking. Not to cook, right? Or you can now here it depends upon the options given to you. He likes eating but not cooking. That can also be correct, right? Both should be in the same form, right, Ishan?
Yeah, and it has to be uniform, right? All the words.
Yeah, both parts should be in the same form.
Yep.
Okay, if you look at this, we have he likes to eat but not to. Now both are to, so there are two words: to eat, to cook, right? Or eating, cooking. You won't be he likes to eating and also.
No, it corresponds to the second form in the conjugation, na, to eat, but not but so you need to convert cooking into that as well.
So either it should be he likes eating but not cooking, or he likes to eat but not to cook. Both will be correct, right? But it will be like it will depend on which option is going to be. Now let's look at this sentence. SAT writing section challenges students and frustration is found in them. Frustrates them. So this is where there's not a list as such, but two parts of a sentence. Both parts should be in the same form. So what we have in the first part of the sentence? We have, now here also when you are looking at the sentence, you look at what is joining the two parts of the sentence. So you have to break down the sentence into two parts, compare. So what kind of break down the sentence? So any conjunction in the middle. Yeah. So if you look at this, start writing section challenges students and frustrates them should be. And the first part is what? Verb, noun. So if you have a verb noun in the first part, second part should also be verb plus noun. Yeah. But what do we have over here? Challenges is a verb. Right? Sorry. Frustration is what? A noun. Right? Frustration is not a verb. Frustration is, that's a verb. Found. Frustration is found. Now, found is a verb. In is a preposition. Them is a pronoun. So instead of this, it should be just verb noun as in the first part. Okay? Okay, let's take a little longer sentence. Grant Paul supposed to repeal of the Affordable Care Act as well as that the Department of Education should be eliminated. Now, as well as is joining the two parts of the sentence. Right? Now, what is the first part of the sentence? Now, look at the first part.
Supports. So
Yeah, so Rand Paul, what does it do? Supports the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. So what is the format of this part? First part? So repeal, the repeal is noun. Yeah, of the affordable care act. So the second part should be in the same format. Yeah. So now when we look at the second part, what is it especially like presently? That the Department of Education should be eliminated. So we have verb, we have a noun, we have a pronoun. So the way it is a pronoun plus noun plus verb. But what do we need? We should put it into the first format of the first part, which is a noun plus preposition. Yeah. So preposition plus noun. So we change it into run pause. Suppose a repeal of the Affordable Care Act as well as elimination of. Yeah. So noun plus preposition plus noun. Elimination of the Department of Education. So when you have the two sentence given to you, you will be looking at, now depends upon the question. If you have an entire sentence and your options are also the entire sentence, that means the structure of the entire sentence is coming into. Right? So now suppose in these type of sentences, a portion will not be underlined or may be underlined. So maybe the first part is underlined. If the first part is underlined, that means the first part has been changed according to the structure of the second part. If your second part is underlined, second part has to be changed according to the structure of the first part. If nothing is underlined, then you look at the options. Which one is correct? Right? So you understood the structure of parallel, the parallel structure. Then let's look at this one. In a spare time, Renata spoke to the iguanas, ran with the birds, and was climbing coconut trees. And climbed coconut trees. That is correct? It's all in the past tense first thing, right? And it's about activities in the past tense. Ran with the birds, climbed coconut trees. Okay, now if we do one more thing, suppose you have a list like this. Max loved only 3 things, colon. Now whatever comes after the colon should also follow the same rule. All the items after the colon should also be in the same parallel structure. Let me look at this sentence. Max loved only 3 things, model airplanes, fast car, and going fishing. Anything wrong with it? And fishing. Okay. Nothing else? And fishing will correct it. So now you analyze the things in the list. Model airplanes, fast cars. These are items, things physically existing.
Can we add a
Fishing would be an activity.
Can we add a conjunction?
Where? So this is an activity. Going fishing is an activity. So would you have going fishing or fishing in the same list as certain things?
Also,
So we have to separate that from this list. So we have to separate the activity from the rest of the list. So we can either use a semicolon or we can put it into a separate sentence. Yeah. So let's see how we can correct it. So we can say Max loved airplanes and cars. Right? And next sentence would be he also loved to go fishing. So the connection is there, but since it's a different thing, So activity and certain objects will not be in the same list. Okay? So this is also an example of a parallel structure error. Right? So whenever you come across something like this where all the items in the list are not of the same format, separate the list. Okay? Yes, Pari, did you get this?
Yes.
Now let's look at this one. The dancer was praised not only for her strength, but also for her agility.
For agility.
In her agility.
For
It will be for her agility. This one, John wanted to buy a new car. So there's a little longer sentence, and you have to analyze it really carefully. John wanted to buy a new car, partly because of his need to have a reliable vehicle, but mostly because of his greatly desiring to live. Now there are two parts underlined for you. Right? So, because of his need, this part should be in the same format. Right? Because of his desire. Right? So greatly also will not come in, just because of his desire will come. Right? So now we come to, we did a lot of examples. So this, what was the strategy you followed? Number one, break down the sentence or the list. Compare the different parts of the list or different parts of the sentence. So when you have a sentence, how will you break down the sentence? How will you identify the different parts? Look for the conjunction or punctuation. Yeah. So once you have looked for the punctuation or conjunction, say and, as well as, but, whatever you have, then you will look at the structure of both parts of the sentence. If you have a list, you will look at the items in the list. They should be of the same format. Right? Yes, man, are you following? Clear? Okay. Then you are, if it is a sentence, you are identifying the different parts of speech in the phrase or the part of the sentence. So the both parts of the sentence should follow the same structure. Right? So whether it is items in the list or parts of the sentence, structure should be same. Say you have this question. Question number one, a part is underlined for you. Yes?
and one original composition.
One original composition. So the first part is talking about the student must present one vocal performance, one instrumental performance, one original composition will be in the same format. Now let's look at number two. Any error in this? Adulthood as unpleasant. So childhood as being glorious. Would that be in the same format? As glorious. So as unpleasant will go with childhood. As unpleasant will go with childhood as glorious, not being glorious. We don't need that additional one. Yeah. Remember, same format. It's like both should match. You put one on top of the other, it should be the same.
But in the answer section, the
Right?
answer is given
Yes,
as,
Pari?
in the answer section, it's given as being glorious.
No, that is wrong. In fact, I have to
Even I think so.
Okay, in your volume, it isn't corrected as yet. Right. So if you look at so the answer is C. If you look at the answer explanation given, It is noun plus as plus adjective. Right? So noun plus as plus adjective. Adulthood as unpleasant. Childhood as glorious. You can correct it. So everyone should the answer section. Number 2 answer will be C. Sorry. Yeah, answer will be C, not B. You look at number 3. Question number 3.
Needs. See. Needs.
C. What it means? Right. So drinking out the trouble. So eating at McDonald's, not eating but meals at the McDonald's. Right? So eating and meals will be different. Okay, now number 4.
C.
C.
Reduces.
Reduces. It disturbs sleep, sprays tempers.
It should be efficiency instead of efficiency.
Reduced working efficiently. Reduces, disturbs sleep. Yeah, it should be efficiency. Working efficiency, that's a noun. So here your answer is C, right? So far parallel structures are also clear, right? Now there's another little thing over here which you need to know. So you did conjunctions with parallel structures, you have to remember the rules, right? So if you get your rules wrong, you will not get to the correct answer. Okay, now another part we come to is the modifiers. Now SAT will be testing you on modifier errors, say whether the modifier is correctly placed or not, whether it is joined to the main sentence of the subject properly or not. So we should, for that, first thing is we should know what modifiers are do and what modifiers are and how they are supposed to be placed. So anyone, what are modifiers? What do modifiers do? So give us additional information, right? A modifier usually gives you additional information. So it could be a phrase, it could be a whole clause, it could be a dependent clause, it could be an independent clause. It could come in the beginning of a sentence, in the middle of a sentence, or at the end of a sentence. Now, depending upon where it is placed, we have to figure out how it should be written and what the error is. Yeah. So there could be different types of modifiers. There can be the adjective modifier, which tells you, say, how many, what kind. Say, I say, the mangoes were delicious. So the delicious mangoes came to the market. Yeah. Or the raw mangoes came to the market. So the instead of just mangoes, raw mangoes is giving you extra information. That's the adjective. There could be the adjective. Modifier and adjective is just, say, adjectives can be used anywhere. They are also giving you additional information. So when we're talking about the modifiers as such, adjective can also be a modifier. So anything giving you additional information could be a modifier.
So without modifier also sentences.
Yeah. So when you are talking about modifiers, here we will be looking at whether they are placed correctly or not. So you are not going to be asked to identify whether this is a modifier or not. So in a sentence, you know, okay, this is an additional information. Is it correctly written? That's your purpose. Yeah. So they're not going to ask you whether it's an adjective modifier or an adverb modifier, or is it a clause. Your purpose is to identify errors. So, and to identify errors, you have to know what you are looking at. So the types of modifiers comes in because you have to figure out what is the modifier doing. So if you're talking about adverb modifiers, what does it do? They'll be giving you some, say, can you give me a sentence of adverb modifier with when? Time. Say you have classes. I have classes in the evening.
Also, you can reach at the office.
I reached early. Or I got late to reach the office. Just giving you additional sentence. I got late to reach the office. Now, suppose I say I got late to reach the office and you add why. Right? So that's giving you the reason. So that also becomes a modifier. Okay. Now there could be participle modifiers. Say adjectives. We'll go back to some examples instead of just going through names. So the boy riding up and down the street is tired. So the boy is tired. Now when you're talking about things like this, so you will see that the modifier is giving you additional information. If the modifier is removed from the sentence, you still have a complete sentence. So the boy is tired is your main sentence. The boy, which boy or what was he doing? The boy riding up and down the street. So that's a modifier. Now the cabinet stuck to the rim. That's also giving you additional information. Now in these sentences, we are just identifying the modifier. We are not going into the structure of the sentence. So it could be incorrect also. Okay. Now when you're talking about prepositional modifiers, like where, say, the building is situated by the lake. Yeah? Or if you give more information, the building is situated by the lake. Yeah. So that can also give you additional information, say when, on time, or the flight was delayed, right? So that is also giving you the flight which was going to Delhi was delayed, or the cat was beside the dog. That's also where was the cat. So these are all little things which is giving you additional information. Say the boy who was at the store bought cookies. So who was at the store, like the first one we did, riding up and down the street. These are clauses which are giving you additional information, right? Now we come to why we are learning all these things. So when you are talking about modifiers in SAT, they'll be giving you certain errors. You have to be able to identify the errors and correct the sentences. So what are the types of errors that will be coming across? One is about dangling modifiers, and the second is misplaced modifiers. Right? So what are dangling modifiers? They usually come in the beginning of the sentence. The modifiers can come in the beginning of the sentence fine, but why do we call them dangling? They are placed properly. So what is the rule now? Look at the box here. What is the rule that we should be looking at? So first thing, any modifier, whether it is in the beginning of the sentence, in the middle or the end, it should be next to what it is modified. Say, the modifier is that the boy who was riding the bicycle, right? So who was riding the bicycle should be next to the boy, because it is describing the boy. So first rule, modifier should be next to what it is modified, right? So the modifier should also match the subject it is modified. So suppose you should be talking about the boy, but you're talking about the cycle, right? And that explanation say you should be talking about the boy, but the detail is more like towards describing the cycle. So when you read a sentence, it becomes ambiguous. So if you have a sentence which is ambiguous, first look at what is the detail given. What is it supposed to describe, but what it is actually describing, right? So that you have to look at. So always place the modifier as close as possible to the nouns they modify. So how will you correct it? Pick up the modifier and see where the noun is. Place it next to the noun. So now when we come, these are rules which will apply to dangling modifiers and misplaced modifiers. So what do you have to keep in mind? Modifier should always be next to what it is modifying. And the subject of the modifier should be in accordance with the subject of the main clause. Right? So you pick up the modifier, place it next to what it is modifying. Right? This is a basic rule. Now coming to the dangling modifiers. When you're talking about dangling modifiers, these are modifiers that always come in the beginning of the sentence. Right? Now, when you say they are coming in the beginning of the sentence, so the rule is first the noun should be next to it. Another rule, there should be a comma after the modifier. So you have the modifier coming in. You're describing something and actual information given. Because it was raining, he got wet. Right? Because of it was raining, he didn't go to the store. Now if you say it was raining because he didn't go to the store, that doesn't make sense. So whenever you have a modifier which is not placed correctly, say suppose we say he had an umbrella which was raining when he went to the store. That makes sense, right? It was raining when he went to the store and he had an umbrella. That would make sense. So you have to rearrange the sentence basically. So whenever you have a modifier in the beginning of the sentence, you should have a comma after it, right? And the noun or the subject immediately after the comma. So it could be that some phrase comes in the middle which is related to the subject, but there should be a clarity about what this modifier is referring to. Right? If that is not clear, means there's something wrong with the sentence. Then you will look for the option which is correct. Right? So dangling modifier would be when the number one noun is not placed near it and there's no comma after. So any modifier coming in the beginning of the sentence, extra information in the beginning of the sentence, there should be clarity of what this is talking about. If you look at this sentence, quoting the sidewalk, we trust through the heavy snow. Now, is it clear what it is talking about? What was quoting the sidewalk? We were quoting the sidewalk or snow was quoting the sidewalk? Snow is supposed to quote the sidewalk. But if you read this sentence over here, it seems like we were quoting the sidewalk. Right? So now you have to correct it. Right? So we trust to the heavy snow quoting the sidewalk, snow quoting the sidewalk. So the modifier is next to the noun, it is modifying. So if you are removing, now here if you see, There's a comma after it, fine. That rule is okay. But the subject is wrong. So we take it, place it next to the subject. So this brings, otherwise it becomes an ambiguous sentence. To bring clarity to the sentence, we have to restructure the sentence. You look at this one. After being beaten and deflated, the baker shaped and seasoned the dough. Doesn't make sense, right? It becomes a little comical. What should be beaten and deflated? The dough, not the baker. So, after being beaten and deflated, comma, the dough was shaped and seasoned by the baker. Right? Or, now let's look at this one. It's not very clear. Long and tangled, it was difficult to comb the child's hair. What was long and tangled? Child's hair. So that clarity has to be brought in. The child's hair was difficult to comb. That brings clarity to the sentence.
Yes.
Now let's look at this one. Exhausted and weak, the soldiers' uniforms were covered in frost. So what was exhausted and weak? The soldiers or the uniforms? Soldiers are supposed to. So now to correct this, now if we say the soldiers were covered in frost, it means the same, the soldiers were not naked, they were wearing uniforms. So we can remove the uniform. So if you have an option which has removed the uniform and corrected the sentence, that's good. So if we say the soldiers who wore uniforms were covered in frost, that also makes sense, but it becomes a little elaborate, not concise. So we would rather go with something that's concise. Right? So now we can have a little ambiguous sentences. Having finished his book, the lights were turned out. Having finished his book, now here something is missing.
Subject.
Right? Subject is missing. Who turned the light out, or who finished his book? We can add a subject. Right? So when you are adding a subject, there can be different ways in which you can change it. Now suppose nothing is underlined for you, you can change any part of the sentence. And you have to keep in mind also that what is underlined. If the first part is underlined, you'll be making your changes in the first part. Then you will not choose an option which has changed the second part. If the second part is underlined, then you'll be choosing an option which has changed the second part. Right? So in this case, we can change it in different ways. Nothing is underlined for us. So we can add a name. So I say, having finished his book, Jay put out the lights. Yeah. Or after finishing his book, say in this case, after Kevin had finished his book, he turned the lights off. That's also correct. Right? So different ways of correcting it. Or after I had read the next one. After reading the book, the movie seemed shallow and simple-minded. What's missing over here? Again, the subject is missing. Who read the book? Right? That if you add a subject, it brings clarity to the sentence. Yeah. So we can say, after I had read the book, the movie seemed shallow and simple-minded. Or the movie seemed shallow and simple-minded. After I had read the book, it can be written both ways. Right?
I mean, the first second, both are independent.
Both are independent. No. In this case, if you look at this, the sentence given, having finished his book, is that independent? Huh?
After
Okay.
Kevin had
In the
finished.
answer, after having read the book, that is, can you write it as a sentence in itself? Can you put a full stop over here? No, right? So it is dependent. And you have the comma after that. The movie scene shadow and simple-minded, that you can write as a sentence. Right? Okay, so now we have another one. Swimming towards the shore, a little girl was building a sandcastle. So it makes no sense, right? So we have to bring in a little sense into this. Yeah. Either while I was swimming towards the shore, I saw a little girl building a sandcastle. Or as I swam towards the shore, a little girl was building a sandcastle. Both ways can be. Okay? So you do some. So as I said, you have two situations. Depending upon which clause it is underlined, you will bring about the changes in your sentence. So you're choosing the correct answer. So this we already did. Now, yes. Now suppose you have two answers, both have made the changes. Now, when you have options, your main concern is what? Eliminating the wrong answers. So anything which seems grammatically incorrect will be eliminated. Suppose you have none of the clauses are underlined. Yeah, you can either change the first clause or change the second clause. So maybe in one of the sentences, the first clause, one of the options, first clause is changed. Another option, second clause is changed. You will be reading the entire sentence to you, right? And you will be choosing the one which is grammatically correct and concise. Right? Both of these you have to do. Now there's another little thing coming on limiting modifiers. Now what are limiting modifiers? So limiting modifiers are usually certain adverbs which, if placed differently in a sentence, completely changes the meaning of the sentence. So we'll do it with examples. Say Martin knows hardly anybody and he hardly knows anybody. They must seem the same, but if you read carefully, there's a little difference in what the sentence is trying to tell you. Martin hardly knows anybody. Oh, say this one. Martin knows hardly anybody. So among all the people, he hardly knows anyone. Right? It was good as saying he knows nobody. Yeah. He hardly knows anybody. He is unaware of the people around him. Right? Take a look at the next one. Only Martin eats pears. And the second sentence is Martin eats, okay, sorry, only Martin eats pears and Martin eats only pears. The words in the sentence are the same, placement is different. So if you see only Martin eats pears means of all the people or all the friends, he's the only one who eats pears. You took the only and put it in a different place. Martin eats only pears, the sentence changes to he eats only one fruit. Right? Okay, now look at this one. This is also the same thing. Only Jim gets a movie and Jim has only that movie. Two different meanings. Now coming to these three sentences. Give only the dictionary to Suzanne. Give the dictionary only to Suzanne. And only give the dictionary to Suzanne. These are three sentences. What is the difference?
First one is to give only the dictionary, not any other books.
Nothing else. And give the dictionary only to Suzanne.
Particularly give to Suzanne.
Just to Suzanne, nobody else. Third one. Man. Only give the dictionary to Suzanne. So if I
Just
am
do one thing.
just do one thing, nothing else. You go there, only do this and come back. Right? So the same sentence written in different ways, meanings are different. Right? So this is called limiting model. So here, if you have a sentence, now this will be analyzed in the context of the passage. Yeah. So in the passage, if there's something said about giving the dictionary or giving a book, and then this is put in, so you have to see the context. So which one of them fits into the context? So any option given to you which is not fitting into the context will be wrong. Right? Now we come to the misplaced modifiers. So in the misplaced modifiers, again, the rules will be the same as in the dangling modifier. What are the rules? Closer to the line. Right? And yes, here the comma rule that is the dangling modifier is, in the dangling modifier we add the comma after the modifier. Here the modifier, the misplaced modifier is that it can be anywhere in the sentence. It could be in the middle of the sentence or at the end of the sentence. Yeah. If it is in the middle of the sentence, it should be separated from the main sentence with the help of commas, or it could also go into parentheses. So either commas or brackets or two dashes. Either of the options could be there. But if you have one comma and the second comma is missing, that will also be wrong. Right? Or there is one comma, that is when we come to punctuations, we'll do that on details. It could be one comma and one dash, that will also be wrong. Yeah. So when you have a modifier in the middle of a sentence, not only will you see what it is trying to talk about, but also the punctuations. So suppose now we come to basically we will be first talking about the subject matter. Now the jacket was too small on the sale rack. Yeah. Now here in this example the underline is not to change that part, but to figure out what is wrong. So the jacket was too small on the sale rack. What does this sentence mean?
The jacket was too small for his.
Yeah, in comparison to the rack, right? Now if you look at this one, the jacket on the sale rack was too small.
The jacket
Based on the sale rack. So our focus here was in comparison to the sale rack. In the second one, our focus is on the jacket, on the size of the jacket, right? So which one would be a better sentence?
The second.
Second one, because we will be focusing on the jacket, right? So let's look at. Okay, this one. Ray wore his one colored shirt to the job interview, which was stained with mustard. Now here is a modifier which is placed at the end of the sentence. What is it supposed to modify and what is it actually doing?
It is supposed to modify the shirt, but it is modifying.
Right. So what will we do? We will take this and place it near what is supposed to be modified. So we can say he wore a one colored shirt which was stained with mustard to the job interview. And if you see, it is somewhat random. Right? So you understood what the modifiers are?
Yeah.
And what are the errors you would be coming across?
Yes.
So how would you fix errors in dangling and misplaced modifiers? Subject it is modified, right? The noun. So it should be close to the noun it is modified. And you should also look at the punctuations. right? Both the things are important. You see, look at this one. She handed her brownies to children wrapped in foil. The brownies were wrapped in foil.
Brownies wrapped in foil.
Yeah, the brownies were supposed to be wrapped in foil. Yeah. So she handed her brownies wrapped in foil. That's it. Right? So you can go through the. So there are lots of examples given. You can go through them. So the rules are also there. Okay, sometimes it could also be that there are other phrases coming in between the modifier and the subject. So your main aim will be first thing, identify the modifier, identify the subject, right? And then see how it is placed.
One modifier is always the extra information.
Extra information, right? So what is the extra information belonging to that? So here are a few questions which you can do. There are 4 or 5 questions. Yeah. So you will do these questions. These are the passages which are similar to the ones that you will be getting. So instead of doing just, and you have options given to you, so you can choose the correct option and see how much you have understood about the modifiers. So any doubts in what we did so far? No? All clear? Yeah? So once you do the questions, I will come to know whether you have any more doubts or not. So when you do the questions, you may come across like, okay, this is the doubt. Why should this be the option? Why should that not be the option? Right? So once you do them, so this is your homework. So you can write down the practice questions, page number 42 and 43. Right? And next week, maybe you will have a session on the reading comprehension. And then after that, I will do, I think, after 15 days. So in these 15 days, whenever you get time, revise what we have done so far. Yeah, otherwise it goes off your mind and then you have to start all over. Okay? Yes, Vishal and Puri?
Yes.
Any doubts so far?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
No? So now what you can do is you can create your own notes. So write the name of the topic, write the rules. Yeah?
Yeah.
So when you write the rules, you can go back to it and revise. So that remains in your mind.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
Okay then, thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
And good night.
Good night.
Thank you, ma'am.
Aman, you have got all the books, no? Sure.
Yeah, sir. There are 3 books, right? One from maths,
You have 1 maths or two maths?
One
One maths. Okay, 2 English, 1 maths also.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Good night.